and I'm very proud to say that even though we are only at the 6th edition, this has become quite a success. And I believe that more and more people actually understand why there is a need to focus particularly on rare diseases in order to solve some of the innate problems related to those conditions. Today we are broadcast live on the internet, and I know that even our friends from Italy, the Italian Orphanet, is following this discussion. And I think this is just a symptom how important rare diseases is, that in Italy, which is probably also quite interested in the outcome of yesterday's elections, there you will also pay much interest to rare diseases, at least in the Orphanet office, but also in many, many other offices, I believe. So today is the first event in a line of events to celebrate rare diseases. At the European level, we also have tomorrow another more specialized workshop. Tonight we have a gala dinner, and one of the features that we have is that we bring together people from very many stakeholders, and I think we can be happy as EURORDIS to have been one of those catalyzing a dialogue between very many stakeholders in order to create a comprehensive look at what are the challenges of rare diseases and why rare diseases and the management of rare diseases needs collaboration between many stakeholders. The slogan of this year is Rare Disorders Without Borders, and this frames the fact that you cannot solve the problems of rare diseases without collaboration across borders, that you need to pool the knowledge, the insights that you identify in countries all over the world, in fact, in order to find solutions, that when you deal with small populations, you need to collaborate. Today we are going to focus on something which is a feature, but a very important feature to people living with rare diseases. Because even though we have in the past 13 years capitalized on the orphan drugs regulation and been able to promote research and development of drugs for rare diseases, to the extent that we now have more than 1,000 drugs in development and who have, which have received an orphan drug designation. And some of them have reached the market, luckily. We still have to face the fact that access to medicines is still an issue, and that it is not a given fact that even though we have a single market, and that we should, in fact, as citizens of Europe, have equal access to treatment wherever we live. It's not a given fact. We are very far from that reality or that vision. I was very happy the other day to learn about the adoption by the European Commission of its social investment package for growth and cohesion, which actually states that one of the perspectives is to reduce inequalities in health. And I think that when you talk about rare diseases, you will probably see the maximum range of access that you could ever imagine, and not only between member states, but also in individual countries. And that is one of the problems we have to deal with. One of the barriers to equality is that member states may tend to take more time than needed to assess new drugs which have been put on the market. And this is the topic of today's discussion, which we have organized in collaboration with the members of Parliament, Antonia Barbanova, thank you very much for joining us, and Christian Bujoy, Antonia Parvanova is committee rapporteur from the Committee on Public Health, and Christian Bouzoy is representing the Internal Market Committee. Following my short introduction, we will have Richard Bergström from the FPA, who will explain about the industry perspective on the issue of marketing drugs in very different frameworks, national frameworks. Then we will have presentations from the two rapporteurs, and then followed by a presentation from the European Commission by Salvatore D'Acunto, who is head of unit for the food and healthcare industries, and after him, Jaroslav Valikura, who is policy officer of DG Health and Consumers. And at the end, we'll have a panel debate. So having that many people with us in this room, representing different stakeholders, I hope we'll qualify our views on how to translate the excellent comments we have received from the rapporteurs into a final revision of the directive on the transparency. And I hope that we will see this as a first step towards getting real transparency, real insight also for patients into the mechanisms which rule the access to medicines. So thank you for coming, so many, and I'll give the floor to Richard Bergström.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you, EURORDIS. It's a great honor to have this spot on the program. These days, when we read the papers, we are reminded about the basic idea behind the European Union. These days, we ask ourselves, what's really, really, really important. There's a process right now going on around us where people are figuring out, what should the European Union concentrate on. We have one member state considering whether it should leave or not. I was interviewed by officials from the Department of Health from the United Kingdom 10 days ago, making an assessment of, what has this membership brought to the United Kingdom. And it's a good moment to actually reflect on what's really, really important. What are the things we should work on at the European level and at the national level? And similarly, many of you are in management, and many of you are parents as well, so you have children. A good technique very often with people with lots of ideas and all this nitpicking and bickering, is to pause and ask yourself this question and force people to ask themselves the question, what's really, really, really important? And for the European Union, that discussion is ongoing. I guess we all know that what's really, really important is that cohesion, is that peace plan, is about European solidarity, the social model of Europe, which is about universality, equality, solidarity in welfare provision. Similarly, in my industry, we ask ourselves from time to time that question, what's really, really, really important? And of course, we have to deliver on a quarterly basis, actually, to our owners. They expect the results. But what's really, really important is that we can only do that if we keep delivering medicines. And delivering medicines is not just to get an approval. And I think we have gone from a model where, when I joined the industry, which is more than 20 years ago actually, or even 25, believe it or not, this June, we used to measure that we were finished when we had the approval of a product. That's when champagne, off you go and you start with a new development. We know that's not really what it's all about. It's actually making sure that the patients get the medicines as well. And by the way, that's also when you will make some money, right? So it's connected. I'm never shy about that fact. So what's really, really important for the industry is that patients see the fruits of innovation. And here, when I reflect on the European model then for access to the market, if you come from my side, or access to medicines if you're a patient, this is an unfinished project. You know, I go back, and I was around in the early 90s then when the European model was conceived, and Jan, I have to give, you know, particularly you, Jan, and EURORDIS compliments really for being one of those groups that really made a difference, not only for the orphan regulation itself, but, you know, for the whole system, for the whole European system. And that's been a great success. It's fantastic. You know, we've gone from national assessments to one European, and there were some people in industry and others that thought that will never work, you know. I should have taken that bet with a colleague from AstraZeneca. I was with Roche at that time, and we were arguing about whether this would work or not, and I was one, and my company then believed in the EMA, and we put everything to the EMA. And then this other company, sorry to mention the name, forget it, please. They said this will never work. We're not going to go that route. And you know, look now, you know, everyone's using the agency. We have to use the agency. It's been a great success. But we have unfinished business because the next step is actually getting more fragmented. This is what we sometimes refer to in the industry as the fourth hurdle. We say quality, safety, efficacy, and then it's another one. This is not getting better. You all know it. It's not getting better. And in fact, there is plenty of data showing that the access to medicines is not getting better in Europe. In fact, the studies we do, and there's been studies that have been done for the Belgian government for their presidency 2 years ago, you remember, and there's some work now that hasn't been published yet by the same people that show that there's at least a tenfold difference in uptake of innovative medicines, and particularly for orphan drugs. More than tenfold, but in fact it's actually worse, because the uptake or the use, the access in many of the countries in Europe is in the private market. So what my companies do, and we have to do that, is that, you know, we launch into what we call the private market. So there are people that pay cash, or they have connections, or they have friends, or I don't know, whatever. They're either very rich, they're oligarchs, or they're in the security services, or they're connected. They get the medicines they need, but the bulk of the population do not. And we see these huge discrepancies in Europe. So this is unsustainable. Okay? We need to really find a model for coordinated, better, quicker access to medicines. So this fragmentation in this space, which is after the approval, so pricing, reimbursement, access decisions, coverage, whatever you call it, all of HTA, all of this bucket, it's a problem because we have multiple assessments with different criteria. People challenge the EMA, they reopen the science. There are different views on how this should be done. HTA is not one thing, it's different things. On the surface, two countries like UK and Sweden may look at similar. They do cost effectiveness, cost per quality you may be familiar with, but they apply it completely differently. So and then the Germans have their own economic model, and others have others. So this is really all over the place. There are some tendencies for convergence that I'll come to in a minute. This fragmentation also results in another problem, and that is that we, the industry, we don't really have someone to talk to about the problems. So if this debate, which I'm not going to deny either, oh, why do these medicines cost so much? How can you charge, 10,000 for this or 20,000 for that? And, this is not going to work, We're willing to discuss this. We're willing to explain, why is it that drug development is so expensive? And why is it that you don't pay for the manufacturing? You pay for all the failures, and you pay for the future, and you pay for your pension funds that want 5 times money back, or 10 times that we borrowed from. So we're very ready to discuss all these things. And we're ready to discuss differential pricing, ready to discuss access programs big time in Europe, like we do in other parts of the world. But we've got no one to talk to, basically, because it's all fragmented. There are regions, there are hospital formulary committees, there's some other obscure group somewhere, and it's really, on the regulatory side, we've got people to talk to. We talk to the European Commission, talk to the EMA. There's a front door, you ring the bell and you talk about this. But for the access discussion about pricing and reimbursement, there's no one to call. This is a national competence. It should be a national competency, but somehow this fragmentation cannot go on. So right now there's a lot of things, encouraging things happening. In my industry, as you're probably aware of, we keep investing more money in R&D, and the next few years we'll invest more in R&D, but a lot of this money is not spent in-house. It's spent outside, increasingly. So we see research collaborations, public-private partnerships, the Innovative Medicines Initiative that we have with the Commission. We're now hopefully going to have another one under Horizon 2020. This is change. It's a big change. It's not revolutionary, but in a way it is different, very different. In the other part, which is down the timeline, after approval, things are happening also. We do these registries, we work with payers on market managed entry schemes, there's risk sharing, there's a lot of things happening. There's a discussion about real-life data. Can we bring real-life data into the approval process? We have a call in IMI on that called Get Real. I love that name. So there's a lot of things happening where people are piloting or discussing a different paradigm for drug development and access to medicines. And as someone said at the meeting I went to recently, I can't remember who said it, but and you may have heard it, Europe suffers from pilotitis. And that is very true. And at some stage you need the pilots. You test and you have the CAVOMPs and the MOCAs and all concepts, different concepts. But at one stage, it's probably time to put it together and put a hook on it and make it into a whatever regulation or directive or something, or join something which is more official and it's solid. Maybe building. We have the EMA now building. Maybe we need something similar later down the line, on this in this space as well. And so we need to build on this emerging consensus to discuss development models, adaptive development, managed entry schemes, big time, differential pricing, big time to maximize access while still rewarding innovation. And this discussion is happening in different places. I've been very encouraged in my discussions with the EURORDIS. The EURORDIS seems to be willing to really take the lead here in making sure that all the people are in the same place and talk about the real stuff, bring things together, make sure we're not duplicating things, make sure what is it that's connected. Now let's give you a little example, because I know in the space of orphan drugs, and we've had the MOCA and the CAVOMP, these discussions, the CAVOD, or all these ideas, is very, very similar to what's being discussed elsewhere for all medicines, which is about a European HTA framework. In fact, there is a directive coming through, it's being implemented on cross-border healthcare, which calls for an HTA network among the member states. So, it's probably in front of us. And HTA, let's not get hooked up on definitions, because that's a place where you can actually work and do things together. There seems to be an emerging consensus that there is scope for European collaboration on relative effectiveness, which will be the assessing the added clinical value of products. When I then think back, this is what EURORDIS proposed some 10, 12 years ago, wasn't it? European assessment immediately after the EMA approval, European list price, then we wanted to hide under the table, European list price, and then negotiations and differential pricing, maybe, we didn't really. Now we're here, I'm standing upright, and we're willing to take this discussion. This is the right time to take that. So, Transparency Directive. Well, I'll be honest with you, and Antonia knows this, that many in my industry feel that, and Salvatore, you know this as well, this is not really the issue. Okay, well, we need better timelines, and we need enforcement of the timelines and everything, but the real discussion is another discussion, and that is that how do we improve access and, price transparency, whatever. If everything is transparent, what are you going to do with it? Is everyone going to have the lowest? Are we going to pay off-patent prices also for the new medicines? It's not going to work. Someone has to pay for this. So that discussion is the real discussion, right? And we haven't really started that. So, but the way I see it, and FPS sees this, is that the Transparency Directive, passing of the Transparency Directive, provided the contents are also somewhat acceptable, is a necessary step to take that broader discussion. If this is closed down at the European level, as we don't want to work on this and we don't want this, then what's the reason to have a discussion about this? This front door I want to go to and ring the bell and say, can we have a discussion about access to medicines? The legitimacy of the European Union to work on these issues depends on the future of this directive. I say that because I think it's very important that beyond the articles, which I tell you I can't get very excited about some of these things, and I want to go to the next discussion. You know, let's get this done with. This is a process thing, but we need to somehow get this done. And I have challenges in rallying everyone to see the value of something like this. But I'm absolutely convinced that we need to keep this alive. We need to keep this discussion alive so we can get on to the real business, which is about really what's really, really important, and that's that patients get these medicines that we spend so much energy in developing. Thank you very much for your attention, and look forward to discussions later. Thank you.
It's now my pleasure to pass on the floor to Mrs. Antonia Parvanova, who will give the report from the Envi Committee.
Thank you very much to EURORDIS to organize this event, and from personal experience I would say that anytime when I actually attend a meeting organized by EURORDIS, when there is discussion related to the rights of equal access of people with rare diseases to healthcare, to medicines, etc., there is always a positive impact, because everything that you share with us, it's on the right time to put it in legislation. And it was exactly the case when we were working on the cross-border healthcare directive, and especially those amendments that were related to people with rare diseases, and made an exemption for them on the procedure, how they are going actually to get this approval by national authority, or to skip this very bureaucratic system to go and seek treatment, but not just treatment, and also a diagnosis abroad. And I'm very thankful that we worked together, because then the whole Parliament and also the Council and the Commission agreed on these amendments, and now they are becoming a reality, and they will be enforced by the end of the year. I would also like to make a parallel with what Richard said on the situation in UK and with the Price Transparency Directive. Because in UK it seems that those which are mostly benefiting from the common market are those which are inspiring the public to be against and to see less interest for ordinary citizens in the EU membership of UK, but at the same time there are also those people which are, or companies which are against the UK coming out of the Union, because they will be not able to share all the benefits. And now this is exactly the same situation with Price Transparency Directive. Those which should have the best interest, which are the national authorities, to bring some transparency on the matter, and to avoid any allegations that they're doing untransparent practices behind closed door negotiations, or some abuse, corruption, or whatsoever is going on. They are those which are, especially in some member states, are trying to form a blocking minority of the directive, although they have to be in support of this, because those people are taking decision on the distribution of public money, and it should be done in the public interest, which then I put a question whether it's always the case if they are opposing. Now, before presenting my main provisions of this report, I would like to first remind what is this proposal about and what is not about, because there have been many speculations, doubts, and misinterpretation. We are talking here about the transparency measures at national level to regulate the prices of medicinal products for human use and their inclusion in the scope of public health insurance systems. So we are not talking about the decision on pricing or the level of reimbursement decided, which remains the sole competence of national authorities or member states. We are also not talking about the harmonization of prices of medicinal products at EU level, or their inclusion in a single European public list, which is out of scope and contradictory to the reality of pharmaceutical markets in Europe, because we do not have, in terms of prices, we do not have a single market for medicines in Europe. Probably this will be, as you said, if we start a real discussion, this will be one of the issues that we have to discuss, because there are just few types of goods and services in Europe which are not subject to the common market rules. And prices of medicines is one of them. Then we are not talking about the quality, efficacy, or safety of medicinal products covered by different pieces of legislation at European level, namely marketing authorization and pharmacovigilance. When it comes to pricing and reimbursement, the reality shows that in many member states, actually, the national authorities, for the purposes of pricing and reimbursement, blocking or trying to optimize the national budgets, are using arguments or procedures related to procedures from another legislation which is covering efficacy, safety, and medicinal products, and mainly the marketing authorization procedures. So now I'll briefly introduce the main issues and amendments in the legislation. The first one, the timelines for pricing and reimbursement. First, there is a deletion of the dual timeline for originator drugs, which was making a difference with or without HTA, and one single timeline for originators, for originator drugs is giving, which is 90 for pricing and 90 days for reimbursement, in total 180 days. And one single line and reduced timeline for generics, which is 30 for pricing, 30 for reimbursement, or 60 in total, which is quite significant, because also the studies show that there are sometimes delays up to 700 and even more days when the national authorities are trying to decide. Then a reference to health technology assessment remains, so that the member states can use HTA when applicable, and those timelines should be seen as practical for national authorities, and the option of a single timeline. This also will help the national authorities to avoid any accusations that they are abusing and speculating with the existing national legislation, and not always referring to a lack of capacity or lack of coherent EU policy or legislation, and actually using it for different purposes, these delays, mainly to deal with financial constraints. Then I would like to comment on Article 8 and the foreseen remedies procedures. This is an article that has created lots of tension at national level, and here we intended to significantly soften the Commission initial proposal, speaking about mediation and remedies procedures. It's not that we do not agree with the initial proposal of the Commission, that probably some tough procedures should be applied to bring some discipline. But given the fact that this was one of the main points for national governments to block the directive, so we believe that probably it's better to soften and milden a little bit, and to do a step forward and to open the door, because with this piece of legislation, actually, we can further work in revealing the truth in many other areas which are related to untransparent decision making when we talk about medicines. Then additional proof of quality, safety, efficacy, or bioequivalence. Our objective here is to clarify the wording of the European Commission proposal, focusing on one principle, the non-reassessment of essential marketing authorization elements, which was the main abuse in delays. We also intended to further include reassurance that the clear separation between the process of marketing authorization and pricing and reimbursement is without prejudice for national authorities to access marketing authorization data and even generate additional data. So these data are already collected. There is no need for another authority which does not have the competence to assess this data to make another database, instead of just ringing the next door and asking for the data collected by the marketing authorization authority, or in some cases this is one and the same authority but a different division. So we don't see a reason actually for tolerate such practices. Then focus on the principle of transparency with the intention of strengthening key areas, such as the transparency of the decision-making process and focusing on expert names and declarations of interest disclosure. There have been many disputes in the Parliament and still going on when the Parliament was about to grant discharge to the agencies operating within DG Sanco because of various doubts and evidence that there is a conflict of interest. Declarations has been filled in, but they have not been made public, or no action, although actually the supervisory authority was aware of conflict of interest or omissions in declarations. No action has been taken. And that's why this time we would like to put it in the legislation to avoid any further misconduct. Then the transparency of prices, focusing on an annual list published and communicated to the European Commission. Then the second big set of provisions, this is how can the Price Transparency Directive improve access to medicines for patients affected by rare diseases. Unfortunately, rare diseases medicines is being the core of our discussion today, is not the main focus on the price of the piece of legislation that I'm introducing now. Therefore, it is important to adapt our and your expectations within this piece of legislation and to advocate towards national governments for the unblocking of the discussion at European level. We should say that fair and more transparent process for pricing and reimbursement is needed, and by doing so it will be possible actually to optimize not only the prices but the decision-making process, and so as an impact of it there might be opportunities for better reimbursement for rare disease medicines, because most of these delays are affecting patients with rare diseases, given the fact that they are concerning innovative products, but also these delays are causing continuous public spendings for already existing practices or very high-level priced medicines, instead of optimizing, including more reimbursement of more generics when possible, and then using more money for the cases of very expensive treatment. In general, this is a very, the healthcare economics is a very controversial area, because it's a borderline between economic management and economically based decisions and moral decisions, or morally based decisions. And that's why, without taking into account the view of all stakeholders, and without discussion, without transparent discussion, there will be always a doubt of efficacy of such decisions, the transparency, and complete public awareness. So there are also three specific elements from the Commission proposal and the European Parliament's first reading position, which I believe will be contribute in facilitating access to treatment for rare diseases patients. It's important. This is the exclusion of voluntary contractual agreement from the scope of the directive. We know that most reimbursements of rare disease treatments and therapies are concluded under these voluntary contractual agreements between national authorities and companies. And their inclusion means that more time is given to agree on specific contracts, such as outcome-based agreements, ensuring both access for patients and more detailed monitoring and value for money for national authorities. While excluded from the scope, some specific transparency provisions have been added by the Parliament, such as the name of products and marketing authorization for which a voluntary contractual agreement is concluded. So this will give more opportunity for patients' organizations, but also for all stakeholders to use the opportunity for civil society control and all stakeholders' control on the decision-making process. Non-reassessment of the elements of the marketing authorization elements by pricing and reimbursement bodies. This is particularly crucial for orphan medicines, since their therapeutic added value is part of their marketing authorization. So that's why it's crucially important. It would therefore allow more clarity on the role of the pricing and reimbursement body, which in fully transparency should focus only on the prices and level of reimbursement of the product and not using other arguments which are out of the competence of that particular body. Shorter timeline for the pricing and reimbursement of generic medicinal products and non-interference with of IPR with pricing and reimbursement procedures. This seem obvious glance, as I said, but ensure faster access of generic medicines and eliminate patent linkage. This will block more money and financial resources for covering expenditure for innovative medicines and especially for rare disease treatment. Then where else should we look in order to have faster access to medicines for rare diseases? As already mentioned, the Price Transparency Directive will not solve by itself the problem of access to treatment. The Directive on Patients' Rights in Cross-Border Healthcare, which will become a reality very soon, is a piece of legislation from which we can expect concrete outcome. The European Parliament has been fighting hard to include specific provisions related to rare diseases, and there will now be a greater cooperation and mobility of expertise in this field, as well as facilitated access to health services for patients suffering from rare diseases. Here again, the Patients' Rights Directive will not solve all problems, but we should therefore look at market issues and bring national authorities and pharmaceutical companies at the same table in order to address the remaining challenges, such as the products is available, for example, at national level, but not included in the reimbursement list for various reasons, and there is no transparency actually why. Then the second obstacle is when the product is available and licensed at national level, but the marketing authorization holder does not apply for its inclusion in the reimbursement list, when in the country are two different procedures, one for pricing and one for reimbursement. And the third obstacle is when the product is not available at national level because the marketing authorization holder decides not to license it in a specific member state. So all these are the three main points which still not finding a solution and needs to be discussed. And as I said, none of the two directives will give a solution, but it does not mean that we should not discuss this. And I believe that the industry has some ideas on this. Also, the patients' organizations have ideas how to solve with this. And I believe that the national authorities should be more accepting to our proposals and should be also able not to aid only for EU legislation to deal with this matter, but also to take action and to use the open method of coordination and best practices exchange, not necessarily waiting for the Commission to come up with a proposal and for the Parliament to fight for this. But there is a room actually for initiative, and I believe that we can make a call, and national authorities should be able actually positively to respond to our call. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Parvanova. I can assure you that EURORDIS agrees completely to the perspective and the spirit of your talk and the intentions that you lay out for more transparency and to solve some of the problems that we have already heard about. We now turn to the internal market perspective. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome Christian Bouzoy, who is the rapporteur, and we'll now listen to your comments on the report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson. Thank you very much for inviting me, and I would like to thank EURORDIS for organizing this policy debate on Transparency Directive and its potential to improve the treatment for patients suffering from rare diseases. Since this year's Rare Disease Day is dedicated to internal cooperation in the area of rare diseases, I think that the debate could not come at a better moment. As I was kindly presented, I had the honor to be the rapporteur for opinion for the Internal Market and Consumer Protection Committee in the European Parliament, which is why after voting and deciding in IMCO committee, I am still following very carefully the future developments in this area. This directive is very important for all patients, since it will enhance access to innovative medicines in general. But it is even more important for patients suffering from rare diseases, given the very low number of patients in a single country. Many things have already been said by my liberal colleague and friend, Antonia Prvanova, and I can only agree with her line and with what she presented. Therefore, I won't be very long, but I would like to focus on a few aspects of the directive which I consider as crucial for patients with rare diseases and also from an internal market perspective. As you know, and it was already stated by Mr. Bergstrom, the way to an internal market in medicines is a difficult way. Member states today are the ones who decide which medicines are sold on their national markets, at what price, and more important, for which medicines the patients can be reimbursed by the public insurance system or by the public national health system, depends on the country that you are talking about. Nevertheless, in the Internal Market Committee, we do have the ambition of building an internal market in pharmaceuticals step by step. We are committed to ensure equal access to treatment for patients wherever they are in the European Union, and this also applies to patients with rare diseases. I'd like to present the main points of the IMCO opinion and what was the outcome supported by the vast majority of my colleagues in the Internal Market and Consumer Protection Committee. First of all, I believe that it's very important that realistic deadlines should be enforced. As I have said on a certain number of occasions, even in the debates in the IMCO committee, the added value of this directive is that it provides for more transparency and legal certainty for the pharmaceutical industry, will therefore be encouraged to commercialize innovative medicines in the EU, which finally will be very beneficial for patients. We are all of us aware that in many member states, if not all member states, now we experience budgetary consolidation process, austerity measures, and they need to make some savings. However, I don't think that postponing decisions on the pricing and reimbursement of medicines and making patients access to such medicines ineffective is a legitimate strategy. Of course, to a request, the answer could be yes or no, but a decision should be taken, has to be taken on a timely basis. Otherwise, in the end, producers will simply avoid those markets which don't provide for sufficient predictability. Therefore, my colleagues and I pleaded in the Internal Market Committee for realistic deadlines for pricing and reimbursement decisions, but then member states would have to play the game and respect these deadlines. And there we get to the difficult and very difficult situation of implementation. This is unfortunately a problem we face quite often, unfortunately, in the Internal Market Committee, with a lot of directives, a lot of legislation, not only in the area of health. if the legislation is not implemented correctly and enforced according to its spirit, it will not fulfill its objective, no matter how good is this legislation. This is why, as a rapporteur, I consider the provision proposed by the Commission regarding the notification of draft national measures and the reporting on the implementation of the deadlines very useful. Unlike Envi, the main committee who debated this dossier, our committee has chosen to make the notification requirements softer, namely by not suspending everything until the Commission sends comments and by removing reporting obligation of the Member States about the way these comments were taken into account. The majority of the Parliament considered that the notification of draft national measures went a little bit too far. This may well be the case also by IMCO committee decision, but at least it would have more of an incentive for Member States to respect the rules. Regarding the differentiations in the deadlines between those medicines where HTA is done and where it is not, our committee has supported the European Commission's line. Our understanding was that when HTA is not needed, 60 days are enough, and therefore patients can have access to medicine a little bit earlier. Of course, if the final report and the final decision of the Council will not follow this line, it doesn't make a big difference from a rare disease perspective, since in the rare disease situation, medicine HTA is used quite often. Another important aspect which has already been mentioned by Antonia is the non-reassessment of those aspects which are assessed during marketing authorization procedures, like safety, efficacy, bioequivalence, and other elements. This obviously covers the criteria for orphan drug designation, including the significant benefit. This is not to say that Member States cannot rely on the data generated in the assessment for the marketing authorization procedure. It is even designed to help Member States to comply with the deadlines by avoiding a double assessment in the same time. It is obviously that Member States want to compare the benefit of a new medicine with those already marketed and included in the healthcare system in order to only include new medicines which bring added value comparing to existing medicines. But in the case of medicines for rare diseases, it is already known that the expertise is quite scarce in the Member States due to the low number of patients suffering from these diseases, fortunately. This is why, concerning the orphan drug designation, using EMA's EMA assessment is all the more important. It would actually provide Member States with the expertise they need to take an informed decisions while speeding the whole process, since the double assessment is eliminated. I strongly believe that this is the right thing to do, and this will have positive effects in terms of timely access to treatment for patients who suffer from rare diseases. Last but not least, on contractual agreements, it was also stated by Antonia, the Internal Market Committee pleaded for the exclusion from the scope of the voluntary ones concluded at the request of the applicant, but including contractual agreements where these are the only way the medicine can be included in the health insurance system. To conclude on this directive, only to say that I really hope that the Council will properly take into account the needs of patients and that progress will be made in the negotiations so that the legislation will finally sees the light of the day not very far from the moment that we speak today. Of course, with this directive will not put an end to all problems that patients suffering from rare diseases face in their access to treatment. We have other pieces of legislation which can be a good opportunity to improve the situation of patients with rare diseases. Antonia mentioned cross-border healthcare, a very important piece of legislation where she worked very hard and which should be implemented these days in all member states. We'll ask from the European Commission to see how the implementation is working in all 27 member states. But we have another two important pieces of legislation currently debated in Parliament, in the Council, which could be a good opportunity to improve the situation of rare diseases patients. First, we have Horizon 2020, and there I had the honor to prepare the opinion for Envi, the other committee where I'm a substitute member. And we asked for increasing the money allocated to health system by cutting from the basic research and from other societal research projects where I believe it's important to have them, but it's more important to invest more money in research in healthcare. And also we tried to encourage, to give a very strong signal to the research in the area of rare diseases and the development of stratified and personalized medicine. And if in the end these requirements from Envi Committee will be taken into account, I believe it will have a good impact on the rare disease patients. And then we have the clinical trials. Here I'm also drafting the opinion for IMCO Committee. And here we introduced the idea that the assessment procedures have to take into account the specificities of rare diseases, namely ensure the expertise at EU level in order to take informed decision on the approval of a clinical trial. But be it in the Transparency Directive or in other legislation, I think that we can say that European Parliament has shown a strong commitment to improve the treatment, the access to treatment for patients with rare diseases. A lot remains to be done. Policy debates like the one that we have today are certainly very valuable in order to share ideas, to inform you, to collect ideas and policy proposal from all stakeholders, that in the end we see real progress in the benefit of our patients. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, and also for the bonus presentation towards the end on Horizon 2020 and Clinical Trials Directive. That was quite uplifting, actually, I felt. I think you all agree with me that what we've heard now from the two members of the European Parliament is a good example of very pragmatic approach in also anticipating the Council handling of the file. And I think we should congratulate all of us, the two speakers, for their work that they've done so far. Now we're going to turn to the input from the European Commission, and I'll invite first Salvatore Racconto from DG Enterprise to take the stand. And Salvatore, you have all our sympathies. This is your baby. I think it's very difficult for us not working in the Commission to realize the pain that Commission officials certainly must go through when their babies are scrutinized like this. Those of you working, well, I guess this is whether you work in a company or you work in an association. If you send out a document, you'll have 10, 15 people comment on it. You think it's painful with all these red line comments. This, what we experience, it's nothing compared to what this guy is going through, okay? We're very happy that you take some time away from the desk and from your shuttle diplomacy, Salvatore, and give us your perspective on where this is heading now. Very welcome.
Thank you very much, Richard, and good morning, everybody. And thank you very much for this invitation to EURORDIS. We know that EURORDIS is standing behind us to support this directive, this proposal. We know that the industry as well is supporting us, and now we know also that the European Parliament is backing the Commission to defend this proposal in our future negotiations. So this directive is about access to medicines, is, I would say, one tiny part of a much bigger system. The health system is something that I have discovered last year. I'm head of unit in this unit since last year, so I'm rather a newcomer in this area compared to you, who have a very long-standing experience and expertise in this area. This directive is important because I was thinking when you took the floor, Richard, that this is about the last mile for the access to medicine. Actually is a proposal which aims at facilitating the access of a medicinal product to the market, and therefore the access of the patient to these medicines which can access to the market. So it's an integral part of the system, because you can have the nicest market authorization, but if at the end of the day the product does not enter the market because there is not a price which is fixed and there is no reimbursement which is decided by the national authority, then all the work which has been done upfront will be useless, or at least will not produce the effect that you, industry, and you and us, patients, expect. So it is important that we make sure that all the conditions which bring a product to the market are put in place. We have already a directive which is in place since '89, so we're not talking about a new proposal, a new idea, a new directive. It is something which is there, but to be frank with you, which is not working properly. And I use an understatement, not only because I'm from the Commission, but also because, of course, we are broadcast, so I must be more than ever politically correct. The thing is that it's not working because the market has changed, because conditions have evolved, because the Court of Justice have produced more or less 10, maybe I will center myself here, has produced quite a significant number of rulings, which makes that all in all, these three basic principles that we have summarized here about the essence of the directive, which is rather simple, this structure requires some update, some modernization. The 89/105 directive just provides for time limits, 180 days maximum for price and reimbursement, an obligation of justification of decisions which are taken by national authorities, which means that statement of reasons must be based on objective and verifiable criteria. And third, legal remedies. The fact that whenever you don't like the decision which has been taken by national authorities, you must have the right to appeal against it. For remedies, all this might sound extremely basic, elemental, I would say. Well, the fact is that it's not working as it should. And Mrs. Provanova said that in some cases, instead of 180 days, we have hundreds of days which are waited before a decision is taken in this area, if any, because sometimes even the decision is not taken. So we need a system which makes sure that actually what is in the directive first is applied, is respected, and second, that also the content of the directive itself is brought up to date. Because as I said, there are different elements that also the Commission has analyzed in the sector inquiry at the end of last decade. So at the end, we would like to achieve a more effective mechanism for decision-making process at national level, so that the whole sector is working in a more effective way, and so that also the industry at European level becomes more competitive. This is not a minor challenge, because one might say, okay, we have the patient behind us, we have the industry, we have the European Parliament. Why is it not working? We have a wonderful proposal, which is based on 10 rules, which sounds reasonable, which respond to common sense. Maybe I will go through them just to give you a broad idea of what we are talking about, even if Antonia, who has become an expert in this area, already provided you with a very clear overview of the content. So we are looking, first of all, to clarify the scope, what is in and what is out. We have proposed, and the European Parliament has supported this idea, to exclude voluntary agreements, because we think that this is an alternative way of entering the market for some products, and that this mechanism should be protected against some constraints which are in the process of time decision under the directive. This will facilitate the access of notably orphan drugs to the market, because they require sometimes, or in the most of the case, more lengthy discussions between the authority and the company. This means that they are based on a monitoring system, that there are some uncertainties which have to be addressed, etc. So the mechanism of the directive are not compatible with the access of these specific products, and this is why we are looking for the exclusion of them, and the European Parliament has supported, even by providing more clarification about how to define these contractual agreements. And by the way, you know that we in DG Enterprise, apart from this directive, are also taking care of other aspects in the framework of the corporate responsibility process for pharmaceuticals. And one of the 6 working groups which are devoted to the access to medicines in Europe focuses precisely on entry agreement or managed entry agreements. And we think that the debate ongoing with the authorities, with the industry, in the framework of this working group, plus the reflection made by the European Parliament, has provided a very valuable additional definition of what is meant by contractual agreements, which is now drafted and worded in very clear terms by the European Parliament, that we are ready, we Commission, to take on board. So this is, again, one of the ideas of the European Parliament that the Commission is ready to accept. Then, of course, we have a reference, this is the third point, to HTA in our proposal. We take also into consideration in the initial proposal, which was presented last year, almost 1 year ago, 1st of March 2012, the fact that medicines are not necessarily assessed at national level individually, but more and more in classification groups and in kind of categories. So we have a system of internal reference pricing, for example, which are used more and more. Then, of course, we include what the Court of Justice has said in the last 20 years, and we try also to establish some separation of what is price and reimbursement decisions from other processes, like, for example, the market authorization, so no duplication of the assessment concerning safety, efficacy, and quality, or also the prohibition of the patent linkage, which in some countries we know is source of problem and of delaying of the entering into the market, notably of generic products. And then there is the part about the enforcement measures, which was extremely ambitious. I recognize that in the proposal of the Commission. The Commission has to be ambitious to have a valuable result at the end of the process, because if we start having just a valuable proposal, then we end up with something which is just passable, just acceptable and nothing else. So we want to have a more long-standing perspective and also a tactical approach whenever we propose a new legislation. Then 2 other ideas which we thought and we still think are important: the idea of the regular reporting from national authorities about the time which is needed to take a decision, and whenever this time are not respected, why, so that we can guarantee a kind of day-to-day monitoring. And the idea of the pre-notification, which has been dismissed by the European Parliament, and since it's not very successful in the Council either, I think that the Commission will have to accept the fact that this idea was too ambitious at the end of the day. And then the last point, which might sound a bit technical, but which is important, is about the clarification that have been introduced in the directive concerning, for example, the fact that any applicant should be able to present an application at any point in time, because of course if a national system provides that only every 3 months, for example, you can make an application, this would inevitably prolong the period. So this would deprive at the end of the day the proposal and the directive of its raison d'etre, which is precisely to try to define in a very clear way the duration of the procedure to avoid any kind of prolongement of these delays. So this is in a nutshell the content of our proposal. Now that the European Parliament has voted the first reading, we think that there are specific points which are of special attention and interest for you as regards orphan drugs. In terms of timelines, the European Parliament has introduced some new elements which would prolong the period which was set by the Commission, but always by respecting the maximum deadlines which are already in the current directive. As I said, the Parliament has introduced some clarifications concerning the contractual agreements, and has reiterated the very important principle that I think also Richard mentioned in his initial presentation about the fact that there shouldn't be any duplication at national level and at regional level or at local level of the assessment which are made, because this is also a source of problem in some countries, and each of us knows some countries better than others. And finally, the fact that, of course, this idea of non-duplication should also apply not only geographically within the same country, but also as regards the criteria for orphan designation and also the other underlying criteria concerning the marketing authorization. So this principle of non-duplication, which again might sound extremely self-evident, is in fact not all the time respected, and I see that some one of you are confirming with their head what I'm saying, which is rather relieving for the Commission at the end of the day. I come towards the end of my presentation. It's about the procedure on this directive. As I said, we have experienced a rather dense and intense year of negotiation. After the positive opinion of the ECOSOC, we had rather lengthy discussion and very difficult discussion in the Council. We cannot deny that, and is, I think, rather well known. But we have had 3 presidencies which have been extremely supportive to this proposal, starting with the Danish presidency, then the Cypriot presidency, and currently the Irish presidency, which means that we will continue to discuss this proposal in the Council, particularly now that we have the full support of the European Parliament. And the support of the European Parliament has been something which has, let's say, positively encouraged the Commission to act with even renovated energy to defend this proposal. Because when the Parliament votes a report successfully of Mrs. Parvanova with a majority of 550 votes in favor and only 50 against, it means that in football terms we are talking about a match which has been won by 11-1, which is a rather clear result, and which is an incitement for us to continue with even strengthened energy, because of course we need the Council to be on board of this proposal. Maybe what Richard said at the beginning is very important, because this directive is at the crossroad of 2 policies. On the one side, the internal market, and this directive is based on the internal market legal base, Article 114, which of course does not mean only liberalization or deregulation or free movement, but this means free movement by taking into account a very high level of protection of some basic values, like, for example, the protection of public health. And the European Parliament in the plenary rejected the addition of the second legal basis of Article 168, which, as you know, after the Lisbon Treaty has been introduced, just to remind everybody that health is a national competence and that it is up to member states to define, to organize, and to finance their health system. Something that we cannot contest and that we don't want to contest, of course. At the same time, we think that we need, at European level, a kind of common denominator to have common rules as regards the procedures which lead to decisions which are taken again at national level concerning price and reimbursement. So it's up to each member state to decide whether this product will be reimbursed by the national system, but we, I think all of us should know at European level how the decision is taken, based on which criteria, and why a decision is rejected, or why a decision is taken at a level of reimbursement which is not the one which has been asked by the company, but at a different level. I think that transparency is a basic ingredient to come up with a rather convergence of our systems to achieve a better access to medicines from patients. And I think that this is a very important directive as also a kind of political test case, because if we fail to achieve this negotiation, I think that this will be a very bad message in terms of further integration at European level of issues related to health more generally. So I think that this is a common battle, I would say, a common positive battle, of course. This is not about confrontation, but I think that now, and I really like to thank EURORDIS for this invitation, Flaminia, because this is the right time. Tomorrow we'll have a discussion in the Council. So now I would say that this is the moment of the truth. This is the moment of the goodwill. The Commission has said and is working on a modified proposal which will take into account practically 89% of the amendments which have been voted by the European Parliament. Leave us free just to refuse 10% to show that we still have some divergency with the European Parliament. But I think that now, as I was saying, it's the moment of the goodwill. The European Parliament has shown its very strong goodwill to contribute positively to this directive, and if I may say so, the vote in Strasbourg, I think it was 3 weeks ago, was not taken individually from an institutional point of view. It was taking into account also the major concerns of the member state. So this was an extremely constructive message which was sent to the Council and of course to the Commission. The Commission is fully ready to play its role and to respond positively with a modified proposal as soon as possible. Now I think it's the turn to the other actors to play this game, notably to the national authorities, and I really hope that this signal which has been made by the European Parliament will be received positively as a new opportunity to reopen the dialogue on new basis. So my invitation, and on that I will close my intervention, is to all of you to remain very active, to be extremely behind us on this proposal, not only in Brussels, because in Brussels it's a bit easier to discuss about European politics, but also in national capitals, because it's there that maybe there is a need for more dialogue, and for you, patients' organization, and also for the industry, to explain the benefits for this of this directive, which will certainly, we believe, improve the pharmaceutical sector in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Salvatore. So, Council working group members watching this live, beware. Salvatore is ready, he's geared up, he's coming tomorrow. He's got all the support from everyone here. It goes beyond this audience. And thank you for also, maintaining this somewhat upbeat mode. This was the intention of this conference, to energize all of us working on this. So we're going to turn to DG Sanko, Jaroslav Valegora, works for DG Sanko as policy officer, and he's going to give the perspective of the part of the services that work with healthcare all the time. So very welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for invitation for this meeting. I'm not going to talk about this specific topic about transparency directive which we are discussing today, but I was asked by EURORDIS to draw your attention a bit from that topic and to brief you about other actions, more public health or cross-border healthcare organization in relation to rare diseases, and to discuss this with you today. And I will focus on that topic. And it is always, we can count on EURORDIS when they are choosing their topics for Rare Diseases Day. And this year I have to say that I'm pleased especially about that, because it is about cross-border cooperation, so rare disorders without borders. It's actually it's a cornerstone of our policy. And this quotation from the Commission communication adopted in 2008 just shows that it's that cooperation between member states and between all the stakeholders, especially in the field of rare diseases, is really crucial. We cannot move from where we are to develop something beneficial for rare diseases patients without this cooperation. In the Council recommendation, member states agreed to work on several aspects of the policy on rare diseases. It starts from plans and strategies, adequate definition, codification, inventorying of rare diseases, on research on rare diseases, centers of expertise, and then followed by European reference networks, but as well on gathering of expertise, empowering of patients, and sustainability of all those actions. And this recommendation was followed by the Commission decision on establishing of EUCERT, which is EU Committee of experts on rare diseases. And this committee is designed to support European Commission to develop policy on rare diseases. It is composed of member states representatives, but as well of industry representatives, patients organization representatives, as well as project leaders. How situation is developed in the last few years on plans and strategies. Here you can see a map, and we currently have only 5 member states which already adopted their plans and strategies. But what we see in the EUCERT, and when it was discussed in the last meeting, we see that there is a big progress as well in the other member states. And this progress was actually triggered by this cooperation on the EU level between member states. So currently we have 12 member states which already established the system to work to elaborate their plans. We have another 7 member states, having already prepared plan which was sent to the authorities for adoption. So we hope that by the end of this year, when the Commission agreed to send implementation report to the Parliament and Council about implementation of the Council recommendation, we will have majority of member states with the plans and strategies agreed. Another important aspect of that collaboration is ICD revision and information for patients. This situation we have now is actually, we cannot accept that. We have to change that situation, because currently, lack of proper codification of rare diseases prevents us from many other actions in this area. It prevents us from proper research. It prevents us from not only basic research, but as well research related to the healthcare systems. So we cannot properly plan in the member states spending on rare diseases, starting from diagnostic to treatment, not having proper information about coding in the healthcare systems. Currently, we have only more than 200 out of those 6,000 to 8,000 diseases described, which have their own code in, and the Commission is supporting process via joint action now to change that situation. This process is done with the close collaboration with WHO, who is leading the ICD revision process, and we hope that in the next ICD-11 system we will have much more rare diseases represented. Information for patients is crucial as well, and we support that via joint action Orphanet, which is the biggest global inventory database for rare diseases information. And in that place we can find information about rare diseases from different angles. Cross-border healthcare directive, which was mentioned today, it was not only about some of the aspects of rare diseases which were mentioned, like we all know that rare disease patients were specifically mentioned in the Article 13 of the directive, but it was also about helping patients to exercise their rights to reimbursement, and it is very important for patients with rare diseases. It was as well to provide assurance about safety when the patients travel across and to look for health. And it was as well to establish formal cooperation between healthcare systems. And this third point is especially important for us because it is about recognition of prescriptions, it is about to build European reference networks, but as well to create collaboration between member states on health technology assessment and e-health. These two last points are very important. Of course, they are designed not only for rare disease, but they are designed for the whole healthcare system. But they will have inevitably very high impact on how patients with rare diseases are treated in the member states in the next few years. We are currently now in the transposition process of that directive, which should end in October this year. In the next few slides, I would like to focus more on the ERNs and the European reference networks, which will hopefully bring a lot of progress in how patients with rare diseases are diagnosed and treated in Europe. And the main goal of the European reference networks is to facilitate an improvement in the diagnostic and treatment of certain diseases, especially those where the expertise is scarce and where we need more concentration of that expertise on the European level in order to achieve proper healthcare for those patients. It is as well about delivering a high quality and accessible and cost-effective healthcare. That's why we are now discussing how criteria for those ERNs should be designed and what should be a center which could join later on European reference network. But these European reference networks have as well several other aspects. They will, of course, will be a place where the research will be organized, where the European epidemiological surveillance will take place. So all those aspects are very much interlinked. they should also facilitate exchange and mobility of the expertise between countries. So not only patients should travel, but as well expertise should be able to travel and to provide help for patients. We are now, as I said, in the transposition part of the directive, and we are now as well in the phase where we design that system for European reference networks. So European Commission in the next few months will adopt delegated acts and implementing acts. How first delegated acts will be on the conditions and criteria on centers of expertise and European reference networks. An implementing act will shape the system of the how the whole management system of the European reference network will be organized. Having that, we will be able to start development of the real reference networks in the near future. I would like to mention just two recent recommendations which was adopted anonymously by USERT on that issue. One is recommendation for centers of expertise, and the second is recommendation on European reference networks. And these recommendations are very important building blocks, and they are giving guidance for the Commission how to build that system in a benefit for the patients of rare diseases. The other area I would like to mention, which need much stronger collaboration than we have now, is rare diseases registries. Registration for the moment in Europe is very fragmented and the situation is very variable. According to the OrphanNet report, we have around 600 registries now in Europe. They are built in a different way. They are not interoperable. They cannot exchange data. Some of them are funded by national authorities, some of them are funded by universities, some by industry. And we are now in the situation that we cannot progress on many aspects of research, not having that problem solved. And this is of course valid for other areas, not only for rare diseases, but in the rare diseases area it is especially important because the numbers of patients are very low in the certain registries. We support that development of having more collaboration between registries via several actions. Just to mention, EPURAL project, EGA joint action, RD Connect project, but we would like as well we wanted to strengthen that collaboration by proposing European platform on registration. This is a new project which will be developed in the next few years. This year, European Commission will develop technical specification for that project in collaboration with USERT, in collaboration with many other stakeholders. And this project will be implemented together with Joint Research Center, and the idea is to support registries in their organization and development by providing them IT tools, ready ideas how to proceed with organization of the registries. This project should as well enable data analysis within and across many rare diseases. This will support that public health research aspect of planning of the healthcare system as well. This should serve as well as for the patients and investigators. And last but not least, I would like to mention another new project which was just accepted by DG Research, and this is about to be about best practices in rare diseases. This project will provide a collection and evaluation of the existing best practices in rare diseases. It will as well agree on methodology to update and to build best practices guidelines. It will provide as well training for stakeholders and for professionals. But I'm talking about those different projects not just to mention them, but to show how very much they are interlinked and how they are actually building the whole area of cooperation in Europe. Because we are not just talking about building European reference networks, but they will, in the future, have as well as their part registries. And they will, of course, be as well part of the of providing information how the best practice should be built. So building that that whole system, we are hoping to provide better information for professionals, for patients, and to improve access of patients for proper diagnosis and treatment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jaroslav Falikura. Is the mic on? Yes. Thank you very much. It was very encouraging to hear about the comprehensive package of initiatives that the Commission is planning to follow up on the Council of Ministers' decisions and recommendations in the field of rare diseases. It gives much hope also to learn about the upcoming initiative on a platform for registries. I could take this opportunity to voice some concern from EURORDIS about the ongoing discussion around the data protection directive, the revision of that, and the potential risk of putting new barriers to establishing good registries. EURORDIS has, on a number of occasions, made surveys among its members in order to collect as precise data on the quality of life of patients with rare diseases. And I think it's quite embarrassing that it's the patient organizations which partly can give the best answer to the situation of people with rare diseases. We should, in a continent like Europe, be able to provide better information on the situation of patients based on the high quality of diagnosis that we have relative to so many other parts of the world. So it's very encouraging that you will pursue that, and we hope that there will be no impediment to it. Now, Rare Disease Day is, of course, an opportunity not only to voice concern, but also to voice celebration. And I think that we have every reason both to voice the need for action, but also to appreciate the progress that has been made. We have tried to portray the resilience of this community and the willingness to collaborate for a better future in a video on the occasion of the Rare Disease Day that you will now enjoy.
There's a million miles to feed, but I've got everything I need. There's a hurting thing inside, but I've got everything to hide.
a video about hope and about happiness and why we are all here together to create a better world and to patch together what will keep the balloon afloat. So I now invite the two rapporteurs, Christian Buzoy, Antonia Parvanova, and together with Salvatore D'Acunto and François Houillet, who is Information and Access to Therapies Director of EURORDIS, our real expert in this matter, to join for a panel debate. Richard, will you be able to join us for the start of this discussion?
Well, there is a colleague of Christian and Antonia that will absolutely shoot me if I don't go to the European Parliament now for a panel debate on medical devices. Dagmar Roth-Behrendt has summoned me to be there at 12:30. So I think you endorse that I will go to that. No, don't play with her. No, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. But I will see all of you later this evening for the gala dinner. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contribution to this discussion and for your presentation this morning. Now, I'll start the discussion by asking, what if, for some weird reason, member states would not be compliant to the line of action and the spirit that you have now set up this morning? What if member states do not meet the time limits that you are proposing? What could be done? You are talking about certain measures, certain actions that could be taken, also in order to remedy the applicants, to compensate the applicants. But what would be the wise way forward in order not just to leave this as words, but to make sure that this is translated into reality? Any of you would? Yes, Mrs. Parvanova.
Okay. I wish we come to that stage when we have already the legislation, and then we can talk what's going to happen if some of the member states are breaching this legislation. That's the easiest way, because this is written in the treaty how to proceed in these cases and to start infringement procedure. But before coming to this stage, which is, I would say, the hopefully very positive development, there is a long way to go through. And this is to, frankly speaking, to lobby the member states to agree that this legislation is absolutely needed. As Salvatore said, the old one from '89, it's already updated. And that's why desperately, because of various facts, arguments,